anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes,
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary Dog!
Pearson and Blazeball.
Futurama.
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Impact Under Siege 2021, brought to you by the good people at Impact Wrestling. It took place on May 15th, 2021, from Nashville, Tennessee, at the Skyway Studios, with absolutely nobody in attendance. I don't care what you heard in the background. There was nobody there. It was an empty stage. They could have done special effects and CGI. We'd have never known. Joining me to discuss what happened all on that night, featuring Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Finn Juice and Eddie Edwards, and a six-pack challenge to challenge Kenny Omega for the Impact World title at the following pay-per-view against all odds. First, from the Superblog team-up, and the other thing that he does, ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey, how do you do?
I want to talk about, so this is not the show with zombies, so I don't want anybody to get, confused here. But what I'll tell you is that this show begins with a black centaur. Okay? That's all you need to know.
Black Centaur is my porn name. I just want you to know that.
Fair enough.
And now wishing he hadn't joined us on this show, ladies and gentlemen, W2M All-Star. He's the host of The Kickoff, which you can hear on the W2M network. Ladies and gentlemen, wrestling enthusiast Harry Broadhurst. How do you do, sir?
The voice of reason never seemed so apt than being on this show. And to be fair, Mark, I do a podcast on a weekly basis with Jason Teasley. I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah, Jason and I are usually in a competition to see who can cross the line first. We usually go arm in arm over the line together, and then over the falls.
Somewhere Jesse Starcher's shaking his head.
So real quick, Harry, have you been following the Impact product for a while? Because I only got back into it when Kenny Omega started showing up.
All right, so I've been kind of hit and miss with Impact ever since its launch. Like, I used to watch the weekly pay-per-views and everything, and then it got to the era... I would watch regularly, and then they went to the era of Impact TV, which was, to me, not quite as interesting, just because it was that 1 hour show on Fox Sports networks that was impossible to find. I watched in the Spike TV era when they weren't on against other broadcasts, but Impact was never really anything that kept my attention. I would still get like the pay-per-views and stuff and watch the pay-per-views just because I'm a wrestling completionist, and I try to watch as much as I can. So, hit and miss throughout the course of Impact. A little bit more so recently back into the product, especially with the crossover with AEW, just because of the whole Forbidden Door entity and everything there. I think it's super interesting that you get multiple companies working together, and I think it's the best for everybody involved that all the companies are working together, too.
Yeah,
Harry, what do you think of AEW adding yet another show as of yesterday?
I think it's smart to capitalize on the wrestling audience on Fridays. And it's smart business to not try to put it up against SmackDown as well, and instead try to direct people to come over to your show immediately after SmackDown, since they're already going to be in that wrestling mindset.
You know, for the people,
interesting spin.
For the people who like to watch wrestling and not much else, this is fine. We here at the Old Men Who Shake Their Fists at Clouds Club, which is also the first round finish club. We're a member of many clubs. We were all kind of lamenting this, us podsmen, myself, Bailey, and Sheehan, who will be joining us after this show, to talk about WrestleMania Backlash. And we were all like, I have shit to do. I can't watch all this wrestling. Like, I would love to watch NWA Power. I don't have time. I would love to follow more of the New Japan product. Unless Jon Moxley's on, I don't have time. So, I was already... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the issue with NWA Power is the fact that it's behind that Fight TV paywall now.
So even for the regular show, because I thought just the like their pay-per-views were something you had to pay for, but the regular show was free on Fight.
I thought that I thought that the Power broadcast you had to pay like a certain amount for the episodes.
You may be right. I haven't looked that closely into it. I think my larger point being that like I can't watch. I couldn't watch Dark or Elevation. I mean, I actually genuinely like MLW. But I can't follow that product every week either. Though I did make sure to watch Tom Lawler's Filthy Island, which I loved, and then we did a commentary for whatever the last 1 hour named show was with Fatu and Tankman. And yeah, it just.
I'm definitely looking forward to MLW going forward, though, with the debut of Dario Cueto in the MLW season finale.
Yeah, there's some good stuff there, and there's things I'll tune into when something very specific captures my interest. Shit, I would watch. I remember when we at the end of last summer when we were just starting to come out of the strict lockdown, and we weren't out of the pandemic yet. We didn't have a vaccine. Trump was still president. The last summer was a whole other kettle of fish from where we are right now. But at the end of last summer, there were some things happening. We were starting to get some things back. And one of the first things that came back, whether people know this or not, was Game Changer Wrestling. They started doing shows in parks and shit. I was watching that. I was watching that.
Collective.
Yeah, I was watching Game Changer Wrestling shows, and I was watching No Holds Barred, that company.
ICW.
Yeah. And I would watch more of those. Game Changer Wrestling actually just had John Moxley on to wrestle Nick Gage, and they've done a couple of really interesting, fun things that I've seen. Just much to Jim Cornette's chagrin, but I can't find the time to watch all this stuff. Now, Chris Bailey knows, and he knows full well, I made time to watch Effie's Big Gay Brunch. That was important to me.
It is important to you, and it really speaks to your person.
And I made sure I watched Bloodsport with Josh Barnett and John Moxley, but I can't do that every week, and that's how often these shows are happening. So, just kind of closing out this subject, in general, are you do you see what I'm saying about there's so much wrestling right now?
No, I could definitely see how a traditional wrestling fan could get burnt out from the sheer number of options that are out there right now. But I think to somebody like myself, who is a wrestling connoisseur, a wrestling completionist, like I mentioned earlier there, the more wrestling, the better. Honestly, the main stuff that I watch on over-the-air television is sports and wrestling. My the TV shows that I watch, I tend to watch OTT. Through streaming services, Hulu, Netflix, CBS All Access, Peacock. Now that with this shift over of the WWE network to Peacock as well, you get the NBC stuff on a regular basis over there too. So my TV shows, I kind of tend to just wait until I have a couple episodes built up at a time so I can watch them in order and stuff. But pro wrestling is something that I try to keep up with on a week in, week out basis. I do have one quick question before we continue the show, however.
Go on.
What is the language barricade for this show?
Bailey, fill them in.
That's easy. There fucking is none.
The reason I ask is because as soon as Cornette's name was mentioned, I was going to be like, fuck him.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yes.
I don't always agree with Jim Cornette, but I do listen to all his podcasts, and I'm about 70-30. On his specifically his pro wrestling opinions.
So I have a tie-in. Not a lot of people know this. I actually used to be involved in the world of independent professional wrestling. I was a play-by-play announcer for almost a decade, and I actually ring announced the King of the Death matches for IWA Mid-South.
Oh, you did? Very cool.
Yeah, the 2018 edition of King of the Death matches is available on IWTV, which people are more than welcome to check out. IndependentWrestling.tv.
I just watched their. That's very cool, man. I just watched their. I was just gonna say I just watched. I watched the 2021. That was another show that I took in during the lack of other things to watch at the end of the summer, beginning of fall last year.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, the King of the Death has kind of been a year-in, year-out tradition in the United States. I think with the exception of 1 year, it's ran every year since 1997.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a history here in the U.S. here. And Cornette's anti-death match, and it's very well known here. But one of the people that worked at that King of the Deathmatch show that I was a part of was Brandon Graver, better known to professional wrestling fans as G-Raver.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
And for Cornette to physically wish death on someone, yeah, fuck him.
Yeah, that's in the 30% that I don't agree with. I don't believe in wishing death on anybody. And when Cornette gets into that, like even Brian Last, who has said many, many times he knows Jim Cornette personally, him and their wives have all gone in, nothing in a hot tub, have all gone out to dinner and
Allegedly.
allegedly. Brian Last, at least his on-air persona is usually, most of the time, like, on the up and up, and, like, when Jim goes a little crazy, he was like, well, I don't agree with that, let's move on. And that, and so when Jim Cornette gets into these wishing death on people things, Brian usually, like, will either say something on air or just sort of distance himself away from it and, like, okay then, and then just, like, here's your rope there, Jim, for you to hang yourself with. I'm going to wait over here now where I can't be seen. On the occasion he's gone into it with, like, Dave Meltzer or whatever, he's had some shit to say, but Brian Last himself has never wished death on anyone.
Does anybody else find it ironic that Cornette got all bent out of shape with the whole Russo situation and now he's acting the same way towards other people these days?
It's his gimmick, man.
Yeah.
Out of it, and that's his thing.
I was going to say, Jim Cornette and Cognitive Dissonance are best friends. So... All right, let's get into...
Hey, Dr. Hammer Valentine, are we going to start this show? Are you warmed
You're
up?
the one who took us in this path here. And, if we're going to talk about it, we're going to talk about it. But, yes, now we can start, jackass.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
All right, first match was Brian Myers, former Edgehead, versus Black Taurus, as was mentioned before. They went about 10 minutes or a little less. I'll go to you first, Harry. What did you think of Myers versus Taurus?
Well, Myers is definitely very tongue-in-cheek with his finisher name. He calls it the roster cut. Somebody's a little bitter. That being said, I like Decay, but I like Decay more when it was Abyss and not Black Taurus. Because for me... I don't necessarily know that Taurus vibes with Crazy Steve the way that Abyss did. I don't think Abyss ever got the credit that Abyss deserved either. That being said, I am happy to see Rosemary back happy and healthy when it comes to the world of professional wrestling because I've always been a fan of Rosemary / Courtney Rush. The match itself was okay. It was an opener. Kind of surprised to see the heel go over in the opener. Not usually something you do from a wrestling perspective, but I wasn't against it.
All right, Bailey, what did you think?
Listen, I love the Decay gimmick, and I'll respond to Harry's conversation about Decay as well. They're at their height with Abyss. However, I kind of like Black Taurus in this whole gimmick. You know what I mean? If you think demonic, if you think Decay, you're thinking these underworld style creatures, and man, Black Taurus actually fills that gimmick perfectly. So if they don't have Abyss, if he's elsewhere in the WWE doing some backstage stuff, I think this guy's a great fit. And, I think he perfectly contrasts with Myers here. He was able to throw him around, look like a tough bully. But, of course, Brian Myers had to go over Hogan Must Pose, which is crazy to say when you think about a guy who came off one of the most extensive losing streaks of all time in WWE. And now he's winning matches all over the place. So there you go. Brian Myers defeats Black Taurus with a simple running clothesline called the roster cut.
Yep, I thought it was a average opener. Nothing particularly embarrassing here. Though every time I looked at, you guys are calling him Black Taurus. Every time I looked at Black Taurus, all I could think of was Mantar. So this one, I was half watching, half looking at my phone. Next match, Taylor Wilde. Go ahead.
Speaking of embarrassing,
the inner kid in me is embarrassed over the fact that you just brought up Mantar in 2021. I just want to throw that out there, Mark.
Taylor Wilde and Tennille Dashwood, woohoo, hubba hubba, defeated Kimberly and Susan. Kimberly and Susan look like they got dragged out of ladies' night at a bar and thrown into a wrestling ring. Like I don't understand the appeal here.
Opposite of woohoo, the complete opposite.
Yeah.
I absolutely fucking hate the Susan gimmick.
Hate it.
What is it? She looks like an ad exec at a mid-tier ad agency.
Yeah, I think it's kind of intended that she's supposed to be almost like the manager-ish, like the Jimmy Hart for Deonna Purrazzo.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is Sue Young's actually a very talented performer. We've seen it from The Undead Bride. We've seen it from her earlier incarnations in companies like Shimmer and Shine. Sue Young can go, so saddling her with this gimmick is not going to do her any favors. I'm not the world's biggest fan of Kimberly. I think she has an attitude problem that needs checked. I do like Taylor Wilde and Tennille Dashwood, however, and I think Taylor Wilde making her way back into the world of professional wrestling is good because Taylor was one of those women who, in the early era of the knockouts, in like the 2005-2006 era when the knockouts first became a thing, Taylor Wilde, the former Chantel Taylor, was somebody that was helping carry the division even if she wasn't getting the credit that she deserved for doing so.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the match itself. Taylor Wilde and Tennille Dashwood won in a little less than 5 minutes. I mean, it's hard. This had a hard time keeping my attention because I don't take Kimberly and Susan particularly seriously. I mean, and you have you know their history, and so maybe you have a different approach to this. But for me, like, I'm just looking at this sort of cold, just with what I see before me on Impact, and I'm like, I don't. You two, like I said, you two seem like you got dragged out of a bar to do this match, and the only one that, I like Taylor Wilde, she's fine, but the one who really captured my interest in this was Tennille Dashwood. She's a good worker. She generally isn't a klutz in the ring. I wish they had done more with her. I wish they had put the title on her instead of Deonna Purrazzo, or took it off of Deonna Purrazzo and put it on Tennille, but she's been on every single pay-per-view that I've watched so far this year doing something. So they obviously they see something in Tennille Dashwood, but it's not. She hasn't seemed to have gotten out of that first gear. I'll go to you first, Harry, and then Chris.
Yeah, I agree with you in regards to Tennille not really being able to have any standout performances in terms of singles matches in Impact. But I think that right now the pairing with Caleb with a K, the former Caleb Conley, is actually going to do her a lot of benefit because it's allowing her to show more personality over than just the whole look at me supermodel spotlight kind of situation that she found herself in. The personality that she shows with Caleb, and then kind of like the post match, especially where she was like trying to steal Taylor's spotlight from getting the pinfall, and like you could see like Tennille trying to sneak in there and get her picture taken with Taylor as well, so that way she could be part of the victory celebration. I think the little character stuff like that is going to do Tennille wonders going forward.
100% agree, Chris.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I like the reluctant tag team gimmick. It's age-old. We've seen it a million times. But it is effective here. And like Harry said, when you're talking about Caleb and, his relationship with Tennille Dashwood, I mean, I would like to see Taylor Wilde lean into the gimmick a little bit more. Like, be reluctant at the beginning, but, sort of lean into it. We rarely see that when it comes to reluctant tag teams, you know what I mean? It always ends up blowing up at the end and the two feud. We've seen it all before, but why not take a different spin on this one? Taylor Wilde is definitely good to see back in the ring, even though she's a little bit thicker than her, her earlier appearances. Of course, she's got a bit of age on her right now. The girl can still go in that ring. I'm telling you right now, she carried the load in this entire match, and Taylor Wilde and Tennille Dashwood come out to winners in basically 5 minutes in this one. And you know what? It was a fun match. I kind of dug it. And I mean, to get a good match out of Susan and Kimberly, that tells you got to have some talent in the ring to make that happen. Because I'm telling you, I'm not a fan of Susan and Kimberly. I don't think they should be wrestling at this point. And Susan has come a long way from the past gimmick she's had. I mean, this one is a terrible, terrible, terrible gimmick, and I wish it was over as soon as possible. Please, God, somebody listen.
I didn't especially care for her as Susie either, but even that was an advancement over this.
True that.
Now, match number 3. Ace Austin and Madman Fulton defeated Petey Williams and TJP. Triple XL featuring one of my favorites, AC Romero and Larry D, and Rohit Raju and Shera. So this was a 4-way tag team match to determine the number 1 contender for the Impact Tag Team Championships. Boy, they are all in on Ace Austin. They just took the X Division Championship off him, and now him and Madman Fulton are the number one contenders for the tag team titles, which is a little weird that they did this, considering Finjuice are, kind of locked in a program with the Good Brothers, but, Impact makes some odd booking decisions, just in the few months I've been watching. It was it was nice to see Petey Williams again. I'm not entirely sure where he's been. I have nothing for TJP. Chris knows this. The last time we talked about him, I'm like, I had nothing for him in the WWE, and nothing has changed. I was really pulling for, just because I love big fat guys, I was really pulling for AC Romero and Larry D. That tag team cracks me up. I think they're great. I want more AC Romero. I want AC Romero to beat Kenny Omega for the for the Impact World Championship, and then two other guys.
If he laid upon him, Mark Radulich, there'd be no kicking out. So maybe that's the gimmick.
Maybe that's how they'll beat Kenny Omega. Finally, they'll just trip AC Romero on top of him. And then where's the other guy from MLW, the big black guy that he used to team up with? What's his name?
Who?
Barrington Hughes.
Yeah, let's get him in there too. Woo!
There's some beefy boys.
Yes, sir. Second coming of the natural disasters. All right, Harry, what'd you think of this match?
I will unabashedly admit that I am a massive fan of Ace Austin. The kid has it, which is something you don't see from a performer his age often. I'm right there with you on TJP. I don't see it. I don't think he's anything special. I think that he does fancy shit for the sake of doing fancy shit, and none of it ever goes anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst part of this match to me was the fact that Stryker and D'Lo spent the entire time slobbering him.
Yeah.
Oh boy, did they.
I like Stryker as a play-by-play announcer. I've liked Stryker as a play-by-play announcer going all the way back to Lucha Underground. I thought he was fantastic in Lucha Underground. I'm not super familiar with D'Lo Brown doing commentary just because I'm not used to watching him do it there. But this was the only match on the entire card that I did not care for them because they spent almost the entire match talking about how good TJP was instead of focusing on all 8 competitors.
Especially when they're not the ones that won. Like, if TJP and Petey Williams had actually, pulled it out, okay, you're really building up TJP for whatever your reasons are. Fine, I get it. But it's like, this guy, and the other guy pins him. It's like, wait, what? Chris, you were about to jump in.
Yeah, well, number one, you asked where Petey Williams was. I think that he's been literally in witness protection, hiding from the fact that he's destroyed the wrestling industry with the fucking Canadian Destroyer. But anyway, with this particular one, I'm actually surprised that someone actually said that, they actually like Ace Austin, because I think Ace Austin has all the talent. The guy is smooth as silk in that ring. He's got a good little deal there going with Madman Fulton. But he seems like a guy trapped in a jobber's body. He does not have a main event look. I don't even think he would stand out on NXT. So, unless they do something with a repackage or, just something different with this guy, I don't see him going anywhere past AEW Dark. And that's honest to my God's truth. I just don't see anything in this guy. But it doesn't matter what I think, because I tell you what, Impact Wrestling thinks a lot of this guy. And Austin and Fulton go over in 14 minutes. So, guess what? And he beat good old Larry with basically a boss man slam. So there you go. Big old Fulton took him down, and there you go. And Ace Austin hits the big splash on Larry for the pin in 14 minutes. Not a bad match. I really did like this one. The announcing was, I would say, half and half. It was like you said, Stryker, pretty good on his game. Absolutely more than serviceable play-by-play guy. Saddled with D'Lo Brown, with the book of the book of cliches. That's all that guy's got. I don't think he has any talent whatsoever and doesn't belong behind a mic. But I tell you what, old Stryker tried to pull it out on this one. Not a bad match. I was okay with this.
Go ahead, Harry. You were about to say something?
Just with regards to the point that you made about Austin there, I think that Austin's going to benefit from the fact that this is a smaller guy's business now. If this were 5 to 10 years ago, Austin wouldn't have had a chance. But I think the fact that we've kind of seen the rise of the smaller guys in terms of both the independent promotions as well as in companies like NXT, Ace Austin and Finn Balor are about the same size, actually. Austin's like 5'8". I think Balor's 5'10".
I think there's a big difference there. If you stood Finn Balor up next to Ace Austin, one guy looks like a world-class talent, the other guy looks like a armory jobber. That's the honest truth for me. That's my opinion.
I disagree, but you're entitled to it.
All right, well, a guy who is 7 feet tall and you can't teach that, and definitely not in the body of a jobber, W. Morrissey. Panic on the streets of London. It's W. Morrissey. Oh, wait, we did that joke already. Damn it. He took on the spiritual successor to the Junkyard Dog, Willie Mack. They went about 12 minutes here, and Morrissey kicked the living shit out of Willie Mack. I really like this match in terms of establishing W. Morrissey as a presence and Impact. Harry, you being a wrestling historian, especially of more modern times, you can probably get into the details of why he washed out of the WWE, but this was a guy who, when he was in NXT and he was saddled with Big Mouth McGee, I mean, had a lot of promise. I mean, he certainly had the look. He has good looks. You know, he's a handsome man. He had a body. He has a better body now than he did. He was a little on the tall, fat side back in the WWE, but like now he is ripped to shreds. You know, he's got the beard on, and this is a guy who, outside of Moose, in this entire company, looks like a wrestler, wrestles like a wrestler, has presence like a wrestler, and actually is somebody I would pay a ticket to watch murder people. So and then Willie Mack is no slouch himself. He's a big old hoss dude, and Willie Mack had nothing for Morrissey in this one. I miss squash matches. You know, I miss matches where a guy gets pretty much all his offense in, and the guy he's wrestling gets just enough to make it interesting, but not enough to where there was ever any doubt that the one guy going over is going over. So, so much of modern wrestling is 50-50 booking, not even in terms of win-losses, but in terms of everyone getting their shit in, Brian Cage. So, I was happy to see a guy just lay waste to somebody else, and it didn't have to be like a Baron Corbin NXT 30-second win, but it was devastating. It was, he's really showed some presence here, and this is probably one of my favorite matches of the entire pay-per-view, Harry.
Yeah, you can tell that the former Big Cass came to show up and show out in this particular show, and Willie Mack made for an excellent foil in that, because Mack made everything that Morrissey did look vicious. The comment that you made about Morrissey at the start there, I will counter you with, or gigantic douchebag from that most recent Simpsons episode, if you guys still watch The Simpsons.
Fair enough.
All right. Back to Morrissey, though. The only thing that I disliked about this match is I don't like the finish for Morrissey. I'm a fan of the East River Crossing. I've been a fan of the East River Crossing. He hit it clean as fuck on Willie Mack, and it looked brutal. But instead of just taking the finish there, he pulled him back up for that boot to the back of the head, which honestly I thought was kind of counterproductive. My favorite part of this entire match, and I'm going to hell for this, but I don't care, was Rich Swann mocking Morrissey by doing the Enzo dance after the match when he made the save. I lost my shit.
Hey, we had a question about Morrissey from the last pay-per-view. Whatever happened with him and Enzo in Ring of Honor? Do you know? What were the details on that?
Okay, so they did the barricade jump at the New Japan Supercard.
Right.
And apparently there were some people that did know, i.e. the Briscoes. There were some people that didn't know, i.e. Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. The reaction to their barricade jump was so negative from the G1 Supercard that Ring of Honor decided to pull the plug on the Enzo and Cass gimmick coming into ROH.
Really? Like the fans shit on it that much?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's the thing, too, is the sad part about it is I actually think Enzo and Cass are a serviceable tag team. I think that the problem is Enzo has this reputation for being a trash bag human being that he kind of carries that with him wherever he goes in professional wrestling nowadays. Morrissey's thankfully gotten his shit together because, let's be honest, there was a while there where it was kind of touch and go as to whether he would ever wrestle again, period.
Mm-hmm.
But now that he's gotten back in, and like you mentioned, Mark, he's in fantastic shape. He looks shredded as hell. He's got the look. He's got that superstar look again. He's lost a lot of the body fat that he had when he was still Big Cass, and especially towards the end of his WWE run when he clearly stopped caring. It's just, I think the Enzo factor of it all, and the heat that Enzo has with regards to not just fans and stuff, but other wrestlers too, is what kept him out of ROH.
I can see Morrissey having a second chance in the WWE. Definitely if by the end of his Impact run, Vince McMahon is still alive. And I don't mean that meanly. The man is elderly.
As long as they keep him off of the same show as Carmella, I agree.
Are they an item, or they were an item, and now that's a sore subject?
One of the reasons that
huge backstage issue. Huge.
Go ahead, Harry.
One of the reasons that Morrissey was released originally was because of a restraining order that was filed by Carmella after they got into an altercation backstage.
Yeah, well, that's never good. That's not a sign that you're going to last in the company long if they're filing restraining orders on you. And they have 97 shows in the WWE. They can keep them apart. But yeah, I can see Morrissey Brock Lesnar's not going to wrestle forever, considering he hates the business but likes money. And, eventually Roman Reigns is going to run out of former Ring of Honor guys to beat up. So, they're going to need somebody for Roman Reigns. And they're going to need somebody with a body and a presence. Chris Bailey. Tell me all about Morrissey and Willie Mack.
Oh, I listen. I agree 100% with you guys, and I like you miss the jobber days. And there's nothing wrong with bringing a guy out, presenting him strong, getting him to show off his entire moveset. But like Harry said, you don't finish a guy off with a kick to the back of the head. These are key moments in building a character, and you're basically squashing Willie Mack here. And you want to show off everything you can do. And I think, he hit his proper finisher first. Then he picked him up and kicked him in the back of the head. I don't know what that says. But think about how this one ended. Go ahead.
Just real quick, it seemed like a bitch shot, didn't it?
Maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe, they're trying to say that, hey, Morrissey's a giant dick. He had the guy finished, but he had to get that last kick in. Maybe that's what they're doing. But interesting enough, if you take a look at where they're headed here, so, we had Rich Swann come out to defend his good buddy Willie Mack. Are we headed to a tag team? Is it going to be Rich Swann and Willie Mack against Morrissey and someone? Who could that someone be?
Well, given how Enzo looks these days, I'm guessing most of his matches are against buffet tables. Because seriously, that dude looks like he hasn't said no to a meal since he got cut by the WWE.
Well, if they're looking for a guy who is better off as a manager but can go in the ring and is really short, just hire Leo Rush.
No.
See, Leo would be a fantastic choice. Actually, I think that pairing up Leo and Morrissey would work out very well. And Leo and Swan have their own history as well from Game Changer that you could kind of work together with Game Changer and kind of license some footage there.
Leo Rush seems to be like the it guy on the indie scene right now. He is everywhere. Like I follow. I don't get to watch a lot of it, but I follow a lot of the events. Leo Rush did a bunch of Game Changer wrestling events, and it was so funny because he wrestled ACH last summer, and ACH. And I don't know what your thoughts on this, Harry. I think ACH. And I don't want to go into a whole tangential argument about it, but I will make my statement, and then we'll see where that takes us. I thought ACH was kind of a lunatic. The way he handled the T-shirt thing, he could have been insulted, and he could have felt the way he felt, and he's entitled to that. But I don't know. It came across to me like there might have been a better way to handle it than the way he did, and then for him to kind of go out on the indie scene and pull like a Shane Douglas, where all he did was complain about it. I'm like, not a huge fan. But he wrestled Leo Rush and Game Changer Wrestling, and it was like it was like the most fuck you WWE match I've ever seen. It was so it was like a meta fucking event. It was just that weird. I'll give you a rebuttal opportunity here, Harry.
Real quick, when it comes to when it comes to ACH, fantastic wrestler, but gets inside of his head real easy.
Okay, so I'm not crazy for thinking like maybe he could have handled that better.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with ACH had some mental issues, and he's acknowledged that he had some mental issues while he was with the WWE, and he sought treatment for those mental issues now. So I always applaud those who are willing to better themselves.
Yep, and then I will go ahead and say I'm okay with that. If he sought help, I wish him nothing but the best. I mean, not that I didn't wish him the best before, but yeah, if he's legitimate got some mental health issues and they got the better of him, that's a shame. And even like, without knowing that, I never wished ill will on the guy. I just kind of watched that. I just kind of watched him crash and burn without knowing the context, and it was like, ugh.
Yeah. And it was sad to see too, just because of how goddamn athletically gifted that kid is.
Well, that was the thing. Like, he had won that tournament in NXT. They were pushing the shit out of him. They gave everybody shitty T-shirts. His wasn't the only shitty one, but his was a reflection of the gimmick he was running with at the time. But the big-ass, like, porn smile he was doing. He would lay in the middle of the ring, and, he looked like a 1960s female fucking babysitter. You know what I mean? He's just kind of on the bed, smiling, hi. Hello, and then they were like, okay, well, your whole gimmick is that ridiculous smile you're doing, so that'll be the T-shirt. And then he went, oh, it's blaxploitation. I'm like, ugh, for Christ's sake.
1960s babysitter or vivid video introducer?
You could either way. Both work. Bailey. Anyway, so we're way off here. we went from W. Morrissey to Willie Mack to Leo Rush to fucking ACH. Anything more about this match or anybody? Or are there any other short fired wrestlers you'd like to pair W. Morrissey up with?
No, I think we've drained the swamp on that one.
All right. Speaking of draining the swamp, Fire and Flava, Kiera Hogan. Now for the obligatory Kiera Hogan is hot reference for the show. Kiera Hogan, woohoo! And Tasha Steelz, meh, defeated Jordan Grace and Rachel Ellering. All right, I don't even have anything to say about the match. Other than I don't know why they took the titles off of Fire and Flava just to put them back on a month later. Kind of what? But let me say this, and I made this point on Twitter. Rachel Ellering may be the best female wrestler that ever wrestled a wrestling match. She needs to not come out looking like she just came out of spin class. What the fuck was she wearing? Like, granted, when she took off her T-shirt and I saw the top, I'm like, oh, that kind of looks like wrestling gear. But for God's sakes, you're on television, woman. Find some classy-looking gear. Not, mom's yoga routine. Jesus, motherfucking Christ.
I think we've got a little bit of body image going on here. I think we're trying our best Spanx cover-up here with the belly and the... So, I mean, maybe that was the best option on the XL rack at the time. I don't know. I guess that's all she had to play with there at Walmart.
I mean, Jordan Grace isn't exactly a svelte woman either, but she always wears stuff that accentuates the best parts of her body. I mean, she's a short, squat weightlifter girl. But
Jordan Grace is amazing.
It is at this point that I am obligated to make a Jordan Grace's hot reference for Jason.
Okay.
I will agree.
Listen,
agree.
Women are beautiful and they come in all shapes and sizes. And Jordan Grace is a lovely looking gal. She's short. She's squat. She's wide. She looks like a weightlifter. And if you're into that sort of thing, God bless you. I mean, we all have our kinks, and I'm not here to kink shame. But Jordan Grace, much like the broad from NXT UK, the hefty gal. Like, it's not like she comes out in a bikini top or anything. Yeah. She's another one who she wears an outfit appropriate to her body shape, and Chris knows from doing this with me for a while, I'm kind of big on that. Same thing with dudes. Like, don't be, says the guy who loves AC Romero, don't be a big fatty and just let it all hang out all over the place. Put yourself together, for God's sakes.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to put yourself in a career spin, you know what I mean? Like, all of these folks, a lot of them don't want to be an Impact. They're making their career, they're starting out, or they're at the end of their career and trying to, make some of that indie money. And, they want to look good. So, I mean, when you got someone like Rachel Ellering coming out, like you said, coming straight out of spin class, maybe you got to question her, does she really care about her gimmick? Is she trying to get a job somewhere else? Because based on attire and look alone, she ain't going nowhere.
I mean, look, the Ultimate Warrior, my favorite wrestler of all time.
Okay. See what I deal with, Harry?
Oh, shut up. He.
You have my condolence. You have my condolences, Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey.
I'm glad that's catching on. Just real quick. The Ultimate Warrior was a whole package deal. There was the music, there was the look, and if you took any one of those things away, he doesn't work nearly as well. So I'm just saying, Rachel Ellering, you got to dress for success here. You got to dress knowing you're on television and you need to stand out, not look like you just walked out of Pilates.
Yeah. I think part of that, though, is the fact that Rachel came into Impact on such a quick turnaround from being released by the WWE, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to remember that Rachel was under an NXT contract but wasn't really being used for the longest time. And I'm imagining some of that was a favor to her father, who had done fantastic work in NXT with the Authors of Pain before, and Precious Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right about that.
So there's like that turnaround factor there, and I don't know specifically how long gear takes to get made. I'm imagining it depends on who you're ordering it from. But I don't think that Rachel's outfit at this particular Under Siege show was as bad as some of the stuff we've seen her work in before.
You're right.
Was she working in a bathrobe and bunny slippers at another show? What the hell?
Don't you dare knock the good goddamn name of bunny slippers, sir.
I'm just saying they don't make great wrestling gear. I'm sure they're mad comfortable, but
Guys,
the match.
I think with all this, I think we had a match in here.
I was just about to say the match itself was okay. The issue that I have here is, like Mark said, I don't understand why you would take the titles off of Fire and Flavor just to put them right back on. My guess is that was a way to show some kind of appreciation for Jazz with her walking away from Impact Wrestling. I don't dislike Jazz. I was just never the world's biggest fan of her. I do think that Jordan is somebody that could carry on that Jazz legacy of a legitimate tough broad in the world of professional wrestling. That being said, pairing her with Rachel Ellering kind of seems like a disservice to Jordan Grace to me, because of the fact that just a couple of months ago, Jordan Grace was the one who originally took the Knockouts title off of Deonna Purrazzo before Deonna got it back.
Yeah, the entire thing with Jordan Grace and Rachel Ellering, though, they're only placeholders. So they were supposedly, Fire and Flavor was supposed to be taking on Nevaeh and Havoc originally. But Nevaeh ended up leaving the company, and they just shoehorned this match back in here and sent poor Havoc back on her own singles, which is, mixed results on that. So, they just got here by literally simply no other tag team to take them on. So there you go. That's how literally Jordan Grace and Rachel Ellering landed here.
Harry, I got a question for you. Have you been doing any writing lately? I don't know if you still write for 411 or if you write your own blog or anything like that. You doing any writing?
I do the 3 R's for NXT over on 411 Mania.
Now, let me ask you. As you're sitting there and you're composing and you're bringing your thoughts together and you're putting it out there for the 411 Mania commenters to shit all over because that's what they do, or, comment. Do you use Grammarly, sir, to help you put more composed thoughts together in your writing?
As a matter of fact, I do have the mobile version of Grammarly on my phone.
That's fantastic. For those of you that don't know or are not, hip like Harry Broadhurst on the Grammarly, Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. All right. With that out of the way, let's move to the back half of this show. Josh Alexander, who I can't wait to leave this company and go somewhere where he can be utilized more effectively. Josh Alexander was in one of my favorite matches recently. He was on a Bloodsport show. He's just so good. I love watching him wrestle, and I'm so happy they threw a title on him. He had an X Division title match that went about 17 minutes with El Phantasmo. I thought, I gush about Josh Alexander. I think he's great. I hope for big things from him and wherever he goes next. And I thought this was a fairly serviceable match, Harry.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I'm not the world's biggest New Japan fan. I've watched on occasion. Like I'll watch Wrestle Kingdom because obviously it's the show to watch there. But I can't say that I watch New Japan on a consistent basis. Phantasmo is a name that has been sticking out over his recent run in Best of the Super Juniors, as well as his work with the Bullet Club over in Japan recently. So he's a name that I had heard of. But you mentioned specifically the walking weapon, Josh Alexander, and I could not agree with you more that guy gets it when it comes to the world of professional wrestling. I don't know that he has the kind of look that maybe a WWE is looking for, but I would not at all be surprised to see him eventually join his partner in the North and Ethan Page up in AEW sooner rather than later.
No, don't waste Josh Alexander. Don't waste Josh Alexander in AEW. All right, we're all talking over each other. What's going on now? I'm lamenting that decision. You're saying, Harry?
I was just saying, what do you have against Ethan Page? And then I realized it was more of a against AEW situation, which, okay, I can understand.
I mean, I'll never forgive Ethan Page for the Karate Man, but just
I don't think he'll forgive Impact for that either.
I've never wanted to throw a shoe at my television before that moment, but why a shoe? Because it'll hurt. No, wait, that's a spoon. Anyway, who throws a shoe? That's the line.
Just about to make that joke.
Anywho, no, I mean, look, I watch AEW. Chris and I review all their special Dynamite shows and their monthly pay-per-views. We'll be reviewing Double or Nothing. I don't have anything personal against the company. Chris and I have had our complaints, but, every wrestling company has their problems. It's more of, if he goes to NXT, he has a good chance of being featured. If you look at his stature, the way he's built, the kind of, walking weapon thing that they're doing with him, I think he would stand out more in NXT than he would in AEW, where guys who, look at their track record. Guys come in with all of this fire and flame, no pun intended, and then just get lost in the shuffle. Look what they, Miro finally, Chris Bailey finally killed, as he properly should have, Darby Allin, but it took 9 years to get there. You know what I mean? So, poor Brian Cage can't fucking get out of first gear. And he, and that guy should have been Impact champion, not Impact, Impact, but AEW champion as well. It's just, I find AEW, I find AEW brings in a lot of talent and goes, well, we have them now. So it's like a kid with a lot of toys in his toy room, but then decides to play the Switch. That's my son, by the way.
The toy box is full, and there's just too many toys, and none of them add up to anything at the end of the day.
All right, Bailey, your thoughts on Josh Alexander and El Phantasmo?
I love Josh Alexander, the walking weapon, amazing, and I think he had a good dance partner here. El Phantasmo definitely held up his end of the bargain. So what we got was actually one of probably the most technically sound match of the entire night, and Alexander really showed that he's a single star on the rise, and there's a lot here with this guy, and I agree with you. I think you can't put him in AEW right now with that bloated, overweight roster that they got, because a lot of the people, they've got about 100 people just waiting to rise now as it is. So throwing him in there would be a mistake. Would he fit in NXT? Yeah, maybe. I think maybe that's his best, his best spin. But guess what? Milk this run here with this title. Do not go back to Ethan Page as the North. I think that he finally broke free of that tag gimmick. This is the first time you get to see him as a breakout single star, and I think this guy's got money on him in the future. I think, and I really love this match. Loved it.
I would love to see Josh Alexander and Matt Riddle just go an hour in like an Iron Man match and fuck each other up. Vince McMahon has to be dead for that to happen, but I would love to see it. Go ahead, Harry.
Oh yeah,
You know who?
Imagine the backstage skits between the two with the scooter. That would be amazing.
Fuck you, Chris Bailey. Go ahead, Harry.
You know who Alexander kind of reminds me of?
Who?
He kind of reminds me of Michael Elgin, but not an asshole.
I thought you were going to go in a completely different direction. Less pugly Rick Steiner.
Yes, there you go.
The headgear creates that comparison. But the reason I compare him to Elgin was one of those guys who could work a multitude of styles. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Elgin's personal preferences got in the way of his professional wrestling career. Hopefully, Alexander doesn't make the same mistake.
Isn't Elgin also like 5 feet tall?
Actually, I think Elgin and Alexander are about the same size.
I swear to God, I thought he was shorter than that. Okay, I don't mind being wrong. That's fine. All right, Deonna Purrazzo, listen to me. I put it out there in the world. Cover up your fucking midriff or get some abs. Pick one. I don't care which, but pick one.
Deonna Purrazzo is a beautiful woman. And she's flanked to
none of what I just said. None of what I just said is a reflection of her looks. All I said was cover up your belly or get some abs, and she said, "I'll just cover."
Deonna Purrazzo, Mark Radulich. That's what you're doing.
I am being consistent. Wear clothing that accentuates your body type, not shows off your problems. Okay. And she listened, and she's covering up now, and she actually looks good. And yeah, she's a very attractive woman. But more importantly, lest anyone listen to the show and be like, do they only talk about the women's looks on this show? Yeah, kind of. But also, she's a pretty damn good wrestler. And then there's Havoc, who I loved from that women's wrestling league that unfortunately got cut from Access TV. My daughter and I used to watch that together. That's where Kiera Hogan wrestled.
Wow.
Yeah, Women of Wrestling. Tessa Blanchard was on there. She was great, as their big heel. I love Havoc, and talking about dressing for your size, Havoc is fucking perfect. I thought she made for a good foil against Deonna Purrazzo. I don't think she had any hope of winning unless unseen Berlucos were used. But I thought this one went about 9 minutes and, was utterly inoffensive and was a good win for Deonna Purrazzo, Harry.
Yeah, I'm actually a fan of Havoc. I have been a fan of Havoc's for quite a while. In fairness, though, there's a little bit of a personal bias here. One of my earliest independent shows that I went to, I met Jessica Havoc and her then tag team partner Allison Kayat, and both of them could not have been nicer. So I've been a fan of both of theirs ever since. In terms of Havoc and how she approaches wrestling, Havoc is one of those ones whose look is kind of cycled over the years. Like there are times that she'll get into really svelte shape, and then there are other times where her body will kind of get away from her. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because she wrestles to the body type that she has at that moment. And I think that it works for her. When it comes to Purrazzo, I don't think Purrazzo's as good as a lot of people think she is.
Yeah, I have said on the show before, I don't quite see what all the hubbub's about, but I've kind of, just because like they're all in on her, so okay, I'll go on this ride with you. I'm not going to actively fight this. It's not like she's bad, and I'm like, why would you do this? Yeah. It's more of I don't see what. Go ahead.
Just go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish. I apologize.
No, you're fine. As Dave Wright once said, fighting for time on these shows is kind of what we do. It's more of I don't see what the big deal is. She just seems like another gal, but you're telling me there's something special about her. Okay, I will sit here and wait to be showed, and that's kind of my reaction to almost any Deonna Purrazzo match.
Yeah, she doesn't have go away heat with me like Nia Jax or Tamina Snuka does.
Yep. Wait a minute.
No, I'm with you there. Fucking Tamina Snuka, since she lost the trash bag and fixed her back, seems a little bit better. But yeah, she, I get that.
So I think that Deonna could be something. I do think that she needs a proper dance partner, though, and having her work from underneath against a larger opponent ain't it, in my opinion.
All right, Chris, what do you think of Purrazzo versus Havoc?
No, you're right on the money. She's a heel. You don't want her getting a big win over a much larger opponent in Havoc, you know what I mean? This is an unusual pairing, honestly, because Havoc just came off from, a heel run with her tag team partner, Nevaeh. So basically, they really didn't lay the groundwork for her even being a face or a contender to Purrazzo here. So basically, you had, Archie Comics Veronica taking on, female Bane here. Don't get any ideas, DC. I didn't say that out loud for you to rip that off. But it's one of those things where you're right. She should be the cowardly heel. That's why she has Susan and Kimberly on the outside. So, a statement win here. I mean, she tapped the girl out with an armbar. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so really,
exactly. Exactly. I don't like the fact that the heel took a submission finish over a much larger opponent. Absolutely agreed.
100%. It didn't make any sense for the character. It sort of got like, hey, is there anyone we can put Purrazzo against? Yeah, Havoc's not doing nothing. Here we go. You're next. It didn't really make sense. I enjoyed the match, to be honest with you. I like the Purrazzo gimmick. I wish she could get some better ring accompanying ladies instead of Susan and Kimberly. But I'm digging the virtuoso, brother, and I think I'm on the minority in that one. But I was fine with this match.
All right, in our co-main event, we had Eddie Edwards and Finn Juice, David Finlay and Juice Robinson from New Japan, who are your current Impact Tag Team Champions, taking on The Elite in Kenny Omega, the Belt Collector, Doc Gallows, and Machine Gun Carl Anderson with Don Callis. And Chris and I have been following this since Kenny Omega beat Jon Moxley at Winter is Coming and then said, hey, we're going to be on Impact. And we're like, oh my God, now I have to watch Impact. And here's my thing. I feel like if you're going to do a crossover angle, you have to, you're responsible for telling a good story. Just don't bring the guy over and be like, here, have a match. And then the match is kind of nothing special. And like, well, why are we doing this then? You have the window of opportunity to keep people's interest in your product is slowly closing with each progressive event. And, they built up to it pretty well with Rebellion and Rich Swann versus Kenny Omega. And, but like the Rich Swann Kenny Omega match was not great. And then they follow it up with this, and they do some kind of fun stuff on Impact. Like if he doesn't get here in time, we're stripping him of the title. Oh, I'm here. Okay, fine. But again, every time they waltz Kenny Omega out there, it's always in kind of an average to subpar match. And I'm like, I've seen Kenny Omega have some balls out, great best bout machine matches. What are we doing here? So, like, it wasn't a bad match by any stretch of the imagination. I thought the six-man was serviceable, but this was yet another example of, hey, man, I'm not the biggest Impact fan, but I'm watching for Kenny Omega, and I'm now interested in some of your other people, but you're going to lose me if you don't do something interesting with these Kenny Omega appearances. And just so you understand where I'm coming from with this, think about 1996-97 NWO, right? Arguably the two best years that angle existed. And because after that, it kind of goes... When was Starrcade? Was that 98 with Sting?
98.
Okay.
97, sorry. Hogan Sting was Starrcade 97. Goldberg's streak ended at Starrcade 98.
Okay, so I'm right then. A year and a half, because Scott Hall shows up in May-ish of 96, and it all kind of comes to a head at Starrcade 97 with Hogan and Sting, and then it went off the rails and into a ditch and into hell and out Australia. But every time the NWO was on television for that year and a half period, something interesting happened. They captured your eyeballs. From 98 to, that first year of Steve Austin's run, every time he was on TV, they had him doing some crazy shit. If he wasn't stunning McMahon or somebody else for that matter, or stunning Jeff Jarrett and then doing the Jeff Jarrett strut, he was hitting people with beer baths or driving trucks. Like every week, there was some crazy shit Steve Austin did for like a 1 year period. That's the comparison I'm making. You have a crossover star in Kenny Omega. You have him involved in an angle where he's got this company's title. Do interesting shit with him. Just don't put him in blah matches and say, well, good enough for government work. Those are my thoughts, Harry. What do you think?
I thought the six-man tag was actually very good, and I like the idea of Eddie Edwards picking up the win here because I think Edwards is a supremely underrated performer. I would have liked for Edwards to have gotten the pin on Omega though, in order to set kind of a 1-2 punch of Omega drops the fall in the six-man, and then you have the person coming out of the six-pack challenge, as you called it earlier, as number one contenders, and kind of the walls are closing in around Kenny and Impact.
Yeah, similar to what's going on. That would have been good storytelling.
Similar to what's going on in AAA with the fact that the former Andrade, now Andrade CN, now Andrade Almas, I think, or Andrade LCN, or whatever he's going by these days, has kind of issued a challenge to Omega for the AAA title. Okay. So, like, Omega's calling himself the belt collector, but all of these walls are starting to close in around him.
Mm-hmm. See, what's funny is, like, I needed you to tell me that because I wasn't picking up on it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not commenting as such on the quality of the match because I agree with you. I think the match was good, but Eddie Edwards pinned one of the goons and not Kenny Omega, so there was a missed opportunity. And then in general, it was like he does it, they did it, and then they just fucked off camera, and it was like, You gotta leave us wanting more. You gotta leave us wanting to know what's the next chapter going to be. What are they going to do next? And I never, when he beat Jon Moxley, I was very much like, ooh, what are they going to do in Impact? Even when he beat Rich Swann, I was like, ooh, what are they going to do next now that he's got both belts? But it's not tremendously consistent, and it needs to be more consistent. What do you think, Chris?
No, you're right on the money, Mark. I mean, when it comes to this entire thing, I mean, consistency is the key when it comes to this entire push. And I really, really think that they've gone out of their way to maybe not focus so much on Impact Wrestling, and I think they're going more with the Kenny Omega thing. So they really got to find the real story of how to get out of this and literally get over an Impact talent at the end of the day, because hopefully that's where this agreement is headed. And when it comes to Kenny Omega, I hope they just don't, have him forfeit the belt and just do a tournament to give it back to Impact, because, you're doing damage to a brand. I think both parties should leave this agreement with, a win-win. So, Kenny Omega needs to put somebody over strong, and I think at the end of the night, I think we're headed in the right direction on, who exactly is going to be that person.
Harry, anything else about the six-man?
No other real comments about the match itself. I will say this much, though. We'll talk about it more once we actually get to the six-man, though. I do agree that you want both parties to come out of this looking better for it, but I don't know that AEW is in a position where it can let Impact come out of this looking better for it, if that makes sense. Because of the fact that AEW is viewed as the larger company, they have the bigger television deal, they have the bigger financial backing, they have the worldwide pay-per-view distribution on a quarterly basis.
I think it's all I see.
Go
ahead.
So while I think it's a good idea in theory that both companies should come out of this looking better, I think the execution of that concept is flawed, because I don't think AEW can afford to bring Impact up.
I don't want to go off on, we're close to ending the show, but I feel like that was the mentality of the Invasion, where it was like, this is the company that we squashed, so we can't let them win. And maybe that's what you're saying. Like, I don't personally agree with this, but that's the perception. I'm like, yeah, that perception murdered what was a money angle. I think it's all in the story.
No, I agree.
100%
agree. And the thing about it is, too, with the Invasion the Invasion's been talked to death, and I don't feel the need to go into full detail on this. We could do an entire series of podcasts about the Invasion.
Oh, thank God.
But the idea there, too, that they didn't have all of the marquee talent from WCW when they decided to run the Invasion angle as well, killed it before it even got started.
Absolutely correct. I'll just say this. I have long said that Bruce Pritchard's contention that, well, you go to battle with the army that you have, and we had DDP and Booker T and stupid Buff Bagwell. That's all we had. And I'm like, no, stupid. You knew some of these contracts were coming up next year. I mean, my God. Fucking the NWO showed up in like February of the following year. Get the fuck out of here. I think Flair showed up in the day after Survivor Series, which was November of that year.
November 2001. Yep.
And then Goldberg showed up in the spring of the following year. So and Steiner, I think, showed up in what? Didn't he take on Triple H at the Royal Rumble?
Steiner showed up at the 2002 Survivor Series originally.
Okay.
His first television appearance was at Survivor Series, beating up Chris Nowinski and Maven, I think.
Okay. So that was still even later than Goldberg. But still, like, when you think about, like, the people they really needed outside of Sting that became available, everyone became available between November and the spring of 2002. So the argument of, well, we couldn't wait. Get the fuck out of here.
Goldberg was March of 2003, actually.
Oh, was it? I swear to God, I thought he showed up sooner than that.
Day after WrestleMania 19, when Rock was celebrating his win over Austin.
Oh, all right. Well, my dates are a little off, but still, my argument still stands. They could have waited.
Agreed.
All right. Last match, we had the six-pack challenge for the number one contender for the Impact World title at Against All Odds in June. And Moose defeated Chris Bay, Chris Sabin, Matt Cardona, whose knee apparently is fine now. Bailey and I were debating that last month, whether that was a legit injury or not. Sami Callihan, ye of the garbage match, and Trey Miguel of ye of broken back. And we had said from the beginning that we are all in on Moose. Moose has got to be the guy to take back the title. It's weird if he does it at this like Impact Plus pay-per-view and not like a regular, instead of like the more appropriate place for Moose to take back the title would have been Slammiversary, and maybe that's what their plan is. Maybe there'll be some nonsense, some chicanery that stops Moose from winning it at Against All Odds, and they'll have a rematch. But I'm all in. Go ahead.
I'm about to catch some heat for this. I know it.
Go on.
It shouldn't be Moose.
Uh-oh.
Oh, why?
Oh, my God.
It should be Sami Callihan.
All right.
And
I'm intrigued. Go on.
The reason I say it should be Sami Callihan is because Callihan has dedicated himself to putting Impact Wrestling back on the map. Let's look at what Sami Callihan has done to put Impact Wrestling back on the map. Sami was willing to do business and lose to a woman when most people wouldn't have been willing to do that in his position when he dropped the Impact Heavyweight title to Tessa Blanchard, correct?
That's fair.
Sami was willing to do business and turn an accident with Eddie Edwards into a marquee storyline that ran months. Sami shaved his head for this company, losing a mask versus hair match to Pentagon Jr. at Slammiversary in 2018, I think it was. Callihan, outside of Chris Sabin, is the longest-running member of the roster in this match. And Sabin's been so hit and miss over the last couple of years because Sabin's had a series of knee injuries, whereas Callihan has been a consistent week-in, week-out performer and draw. Don't just call him the draw for no reason for this company. In my opinion, and I see where you guys are coming from with Moose, and yes, Moose has the look. Moose can talk. Moose has gotten way better in the ring than he was even in Ring of Honor. But to me, when it comes to Impact Wrestling, Sami Callihan is Impact Wrestling.
I 100% agree with your argument. It is logical. It flows. It makes sense. Now let me ask you an important question, and maybe the answer to this is yes, too, at which case I will go, God bless you, brother. Do you really want to see Kenny Omega versus Garbage McGee?
I think it would be an interesting clash of styles. And I think that Sami would mesh better with Omega's style than Moose does.
I don't know. I think Kenny Omega bouncing off of Moose's chiseled chest would be more entertaining for me than.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. And maybe it's just a preference thing. The other thing about it is, if they went with Kenny Omega versus Sami Callihan in a garbage match, sure. everything I've seen out of Sami Callihan for the past few months has been him doing garbage matches, and Kenny Omega has certainly had his fair share with Jon Moxley and whatnot. So as long as we don't try to blow the ring up again, I think we'll be fine. And in that sense, maybe. I just, I look at the poster, I look at the two of them together, I look at the bodies, and it just, aesthetically, I'm like, Kenny Omega and Sami Callihan? It just,
Oh, I don't disagree that Moose looks more like a superstar than Sami Callihan does. Yeah, but I think Sami's a better worker, I think Sami's a better promo, and I think Sami has been far more consistent.
Yeah, I don't have a good counter argument other than, as my wife would say when listening back to the Twilight Long Road to Ruin that we did, Moose is a pretty man. But, and I want to see, because Kenny Omega, kind of like Seth Rollins, I think works better with a guy that can keep up with him. I want to see Kenny Omega Kenny Omega, since he's been in AEW, hasn't wrestled like huge dudes. Like, he hasn't really been in there with, the Murder Hawk or some of the other guys around that size and shape. Like, I don't ever remember him wrestling the late Brody Lee or anything like that. And so it's something I want to see. I want to see Kenny Omega in there with see how much better he can work or how much worse he can work with a guy, who dwarfs him, as opposed to Sami Callihan.
I would counter that argument with the fact that Kenny's best matches in Japan were against guys that were either his size or smaller, i.e. Kazuchika Okada, i.e. Hiroshi Tanahashi, and even Jericho, who would be a similar body size matchup to Sami Callihan.
All right, that's fair. What did you think of the six-pack challenge overall?
I thought it was really good, really entertaining. They kept a strong pace throughout the match here. I like the idea behind Callihan getting taken out before the finish there, because that kind of teases maybe a triple threat at Slammiversary after Moose gets screwed against all odds, and I think that could be a proper way to go, because both of us would get what we want there. We'd have both Moose and Callihan, and again, it ties back into the story of the walls closing around Kenny Omega. Omega's making so many enemies right now that eventually it's going to catch up to them, and they're going to beat his ass.
Wouldn't it be fun if Jon Moxley showed up and it became like a fatal four-way?
I think we're seeing more and more of Moxley showing up elsewhere, too, like what you mentioned earlier with him showing up in Game Changer. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more of a crossover here. And it would help kind of tilt the balance more towards Impact as well, because honestly, all Impact's really gotten out of this so far was Private Party for a one-off to lose to the Good Brothers, and then Omega showing up at several episodes of Impact Wrestling and a couple of the Impact Plus pay-per-views.
Yeah, I would not be opposed to a Slammiversary four-way between Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega, Sami Callihan, and Moose, and let it be just an all-out garbage match. By the way, Rich Swann's got to cost Moose the title, right? That's how Against All Odds ends, with Rich Swann screwing Moose. Yeah?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. Although I do think that Swann's going to be focused on Morrissey at Against All Odds, personally.
He might, but there's no reason why he can't make 2 appearances. Chris Bailey, we've thrown a lot out there. Who should have won the match, who did win the match. What are your thoughts on God, and would you really like to meet her?
I think they had the right winner here. I think putting Moose over strong is exactly where you should, where you should be headed for the next pay-per-view. He's iconic. On that imagery, especially when you're talking about it, who looks like a star, whether he's box office or not, I think it's the right person. He just came off that, fake TNA heavyweight title, sort of thing that they half paid off, and they went and stalled out. They had, certainly a different direction planned out prior to AEW's involvement, but I'm glad to see this is where it's gone. Will he beat Kenny Omega? Of course not. He won't. But, But I would like to think that he'd have a chance, and I'd like to think that he's put over strong enough that you're building a star on another level when it comes to Moose. With Sami Callihan, I agree with everything, and I think some of his feuds that he's had, especially with Eddie Edwards, Tessa Blanchard was a fun one. I literally couldn't get enough of that feud. That was one of the things that brought me right back full circle to Impact Wrestling. The stuff with Eddie Edwards went on way too long. We've seen it all before. And I just wanted both men to disappear from my screen, to the point where I still don't like Eddie Edwards on my screen to this day because of that feud with Sami Callihan. It was too much overwrought. You involved a wife. You did everything in the world to, cripple a man and his wife and everything you could throw at the thing. I mean, when Sami Callihan goes in full gear, he goes full metal. He beats up women. He goes hardcore. He does extremely, almost to the point of murdering somebody in that ring. And it's all right for a while, but when you get to the second and third feud, when it's the same thing, it runs me out of gas. For me, Sami Callihan, here's the X Division title for 2 weeks. Sami, get the fuck off my screen. That's all I can say.
All right, so overall, I thought it was a pretty decent show. I was entertained. I don't have any real major complaints, as you might have picked up from this. A comment here or there, but this wasn't like some of the shows we reviewed last year where I was like, why do I watch wrestling anymore? This was an average wrestling show. I was happy to watch it. My question to you, Harry, going with your final thoughts on this show overall, what are you listening to these days? You're sitting at your computer, you're writing your 3 Rs, you're prepping for your kickoff podcast, you got music playing in the background. What are you listening to?
I'm usually using Amazon Music. Why do you ask?
Oh, Amazon Music. Tell me more, Harry.
I go to get Amazon Music /W2M Network, or I search for W2M Network on any Alexa-enabled device, and I can listen to myself on the kickoff, or any one of a number of different artists through the Amazon Music library.
Isn't listening to yourself on Amazon Music just the best?
I mean, I'm not one to stroke my own ego or anything.
Yes, Harry is 110% right. Go if you can get a free 30 days of Amazon Music on us by clicking the link in the description of getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. All right, Harry, take me home, baby doll.
Solid 8 for this show, actually. Was kind of hesitant going in just because the Impact Plus specials have been inconsistent at times, but this one was really, really good. And I think that Impact will benefit from starting to getting fans back in there because they're putting on a very serviceable product currently.
Yeah, I know Jim Cornette, not to bring his name up again, but he's like, I refuse to watch this. They shot a guy on television. Okay, if we could turn the page, Mr. Cornette, they're not doing really embarrassing stuff that much on Impact. Like, when I watch Impact now, this isn't one of the shows I'm finding myself going, I don't know why I do this to myself. I very much, their backstage sketches are, leave something to be desired, but their in-ring product actually is not that bad for modern wrestling.
Yeah, I think that there's a strong mix of both that indie strong style wrestling that we see in guys like Callahan, that almost lucha libre influence in people like El Phantasmo, and to a X Division scale, guys like a Petey Williams, guys like a Trey Miguel, and then that super heavyweight style as well in guys like Moose and W. Morrissey. So I think that they have a little bit of everything to satiate any kind of wrestling fan that might be willing to watch the product currently.
Yeah, I think if they hadn't gone through that dark period, or if they hadn't, switched networks 97 times, they wouldn't have the reputation for being this garbage wrestling product, which I think is unfair. I think if you look at it with an open mind and kind of forget the Dixie Carter horrible history of TNA, you'd find a very serviceable... There's nothing on Impact Wrestling that is so much worse than anything I've seen on AEW or NXT for that matter, to where I'm like, no, this is a shade below and no one should watch this garbage. I think there are segments of the Impact Wrestling show that if you traded them out with NXT or AEW, I wouldn't know the difference other than, the ring is different colors or whatever. Chris Bailey, take me home.
Yeah, listen, I think I'm with you guys. I think this show was more than serviceable. I don't know if there was a match that I truly did not like on this one. It had a bit of everything. You had your technical wrestling, you had your basic garbage match, you had your X Division match, you had your heavy hitter match, and then you had your just your Impact talent match in a 3-way with stakes on the line. So literally, when it comes to these Impact shows, I don't know if you could really ask for much more out of this with the current product. And you're right, some live fans actually doing some real cheering. But I tell you what, they do a better job with no fans in the audience than I think any promotion out of them all have done so far, because I still believe the action and I still believe the crowd noise for some reason. Maybe it's the COVID immunity that I built up over the past year with all the different shows. But I think that Impact does a great job with just the lighting alone when it comes to that. If I had a complaint, probably the only real complaint I got was the announcing was the drizzling shit. Outside of that, man, really, really bad. D'Lo Brown does not belong behind the mic. I'm telling you right now. But outside of that, no, listen, I was perfectly acceptably okay with this Impact show. No complaints whatsoever.
All right, Chris, do your plugs really quick. We are running low on time, and we still have WrestleMania Backlash to get to on our next podcast. So this one's going to end, and then you can go back into the archives, and you'll find WrestleMania Backlash. So go ahead, do your plugs. Harry, then do your plugs, and then we'll get on out of here for the evening.
Well, first I'm going to start with every single show that we have on the W2M network right now. So let's start right at the very top. No, I'm kidding.
God.
That's Mark's spot, the Greg Valentine. There's a reason why I call him Greg the Hammer Valentine.
She is waiting patiently. Go.
Okay, you can find me over on the Twitter at Charlton_hero. You can also find me. Myself and Mr. Chris Sheehan, the other podsman, we've also started up our ElfQuest podcast is back. Episode 2 is in the can. Quester Days is back and is going to air on Sunday. Otherwise, you can see me or hang with me over here with Mark Radulich and all the shenanigans with the Radulich and Broadcasting gang over here in the W2M network. That's Chris Bailey.
All right, kick it off, Harry Broadhurst.
The kickoff, usually we tape on Thursday nights. We actually have a planned episode a little bit later on this evening here where we cover the 2021 NFL Draft, giving our thoughts on what teams did the best, what teams did the worst, how we think our teams did, and who the biggest studs and biggest busts coming out of this draft will be. Plus, we talk free agent news with Aaron Rodgers wanting out of Green Bay, Russell Wilson possibly wanting out of Seattle, and a 17-game schedule? What the hell? All that and more tonight on the W2M network on the kickoff. And in addition, if you want to hear me talk weekly wrestling, you can check out the Chairshot Radio Network, where myself and 411 Mania's Tony Acero, he of the Raw Report, cover Raw and SmackDown on a weekly basis for The Reaction, a presentation of the Chairshot Radio Network. In addition, you can read my thoughts on NXT by checking out the 3 R's over on 411mania.com/wrestling.
You have to talk about Raw every week, you poor bastard. All right, folks, that is our review of Impact Under Siege. Stay tuned. Up next is WrestleMania Backlash. Until then, for Harry Broadhurst and Chris Bailey, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.
We've lost Chris Bailey. Yeah, I get a little long-winded at times. I'm sorry.